Welcome to Circle of Hearts Radio. Journey with Grandmother Alaya as she enters her magical world of relics, sacred sites, and ancient crystal skulls. Meet with exciting trailblazer authors and individuals shifting the consciousness of humanity. Send her your questions to be answered on air on her monthly segment, Ask the Oracle. And now your host, Grandmother Alaya, in the sanctuary on the airwaves on OMTimes Radio.
Welcome to the Circle of Hearts Radio on OMTimes Radio FM. Welcome to my sanctuary. Now, today we're going to broach a very difficult subject. It's part of a life cycle that we're all in. And I think humanity is actually more aware, and we can talk about this and educate people and make information available to you. Now, before I introduce my guest, I'd like you all, if you can, to have a pen and pencil and pad, paper, ready, because in the last segment, I have an announcement, and also my guest will be giving you information of how and where to contact her. So if this subject touches your heart, or there's a circumstance in life you've been thinking about, either for yourself, a friend, another family member, please listen carefully, because what this information is on death midwife or doula is coming up a lot with the conscious death awareness movement that's coming up, where people are being more empowered of what's going on and making life decisions. No longer are we, let's put a loved one into a quiet room. No one interacts or with them or be with them during this important transition back into spirit. And this is as many years of a hospice nurse. I've seen this, and I've also seen, hospice has really moved up in awareness, and people are ready to talk about this subject. What's interesting, like I said, is that this is the information that we bring back from the ancestors. So if you look at different cultures, whether it's the Egyptians or the Greek or the Tibetans, there's always been some that have helped people transition. So now let's get an up-to-date awareness and education of what's going on. Spirit actually guided me to my next guest, Joellyn St. Pierre. And because I find her energy very reputable, and she's very passionate about bringing forth this information. So not taking any more time, and like I said, please have pen and paper handy in the last quarter of the show so you can write down some things that we're going to mention. Joellyn, are you there?
Sure am. Thank you for having me.
Oh, this is such a really important subject that's more in the open now. And as I was talking to you in a chat, a day or so ago, I really believe that people need information on it. Because as any time some kind of new movement comes about, people, all right, we're going to do this and do that, but it's not compassionate care. They look at more as a business. And this is a very sensitive subject. I mean, if you're about to lose someone that's close to you, I mean, it's heart-wrenching, and you really need support of somebody who has an idea that can help you through it. And also the patient or the client or the individual soul that's transitioning. Let's not forget them. This is an important part of their life cycle. So to start off, can you give us an idea what a death midwife is, or a doula, from your perspective?
From my perspective, certainly. As I'm finding out, as I put my book out in 2009, and the field has really burgeoned since then. And the term death midwifery has almost become like a blanket term for many different types and areas of working with the dying, whether it's the families or whether it's green burials. But to me, the word death midwifery, the term, which I did not create. I actually heard it first from a woman named Anya Foos-Graybar in her book, Deathing. Death midwifery, to me, is focused on that person who is transitioning. Just as we have midwives who help a new life to be born into this world, the physical world, the death midwife or doula simply is the Greek word for that means basically death, means basically midwife. We help the person here in the physical world who appears to be dying but is being born into another world. So truly the birth midwives and the death midwives are doing the same work, but on the different ends of the spectrum as far as our physical world is concerned. So my focus was really on that person making the transition, creating sacred space. And really, so many of my clients, not all of them, but so many of them, when I was working with them, would be in what we would call an unresponsive state. But truly, that's not correct. They're very responsive. They're highly responsive, but you have to learn as a death midwife in their language, which has shifted. And that was what my book was about, was to teach people who are sitting with the dying, to commune with them, to find that way to make the contact, and then to actually help them in whatever ways they needed to make that transition with as much grace, dignity, beauty, and peace as possible.
I think this is really important. I like your perspective of working with with the soul that's transitioning, because I know as a hospice nurse, I mean, that was a while ago, but I've been watching this subject, develop, and still from the nursing end, we take care of the body, but you take care of the soul. And they have volunteers in hospice which aid the family. So this is something for people to consider. That there's a really good support system out there, but you have to realize it's out there.
Absolutely. And what I found often, I worked for almost 18 years with people in various situations, hospices and hospitals, home health aid, but always geared to working with the dying, that the actual person dying gets lost in the shuffle often.
Oh,
Just kind of
definitely. I
gets
mean,
lost.
people talk. I mean, they don't realize. I mean, if you're standing over a loved one and you're saying to them, talking to the doctors or, whatever, and, got this gloomy projection. I mean, I don't expect you to be dancing, but don't realize, oh, well, so and so didn't like that person anyhow.
Right.
I mean, don't say those things.
Because they can hear you. They may
And this
not
is
be
really
able to
true.
respond, but they hear every word. The thing is, and this is what I have found over and over and over, they don't, they don't become less responsive, even though they can't communicate sometimes verbally. But as the body is dying, those fields, the physical body is loosening up, the etheric body is loosening up, the astral body is loosening up. Everything's becoming more permeable. If anything, they become more sensitive, more responsive. I saw that over and over and over again, that they would react to sound, too loud a sound, to touch. It had to be gentle touch, and sometimes touch became too much. It just depends on where they are in the spectrum of dying, but not less responsive, more responsive. So we have to be more sensitive. And they hear, that's the last sense that goes. They hear everything.
Yeah, I know it's come a long way since I worked in the field. But I've seen, I know, the family is terrible. But I always admire the family that allows a person to come home. Because forget the hospital scene.
Yeah.
It is far too barren and if one of my interests, I don't know why, well, I do know why, was AIDS patients, which we have a lot of similarities, and you'll find out a little while later. They isolate them, so it's bad enough the person making this transition, but to feel that nobody on this planet wants them,
right,
or doesn't want to touch them, or
right.
And there's so many things that can be done. I mean, um, they can be sung to. They can, music can be played. Flowers can be there. Like Joellyn says, you have to adapt it to a situation. So I know we're coming to a first break, but this goes quickly. I told you.
Right.
On the second, after the commercial, I want to have you give a little bit of your background, and then maybe even in the third, to go what it's like and how you actually help the patient. Pick a case scenario, how a person that wants to get into this field, or whether it's family or something, what to expect, what to see, what to do. So, like I said, this is a very difficult subject that we're only briefly touching on. That's why I want everybody who's listening and who's interested to please have paper and pen handy, so when Joellyn gives her contact information and her sites and her books, you can find out more about it, because we can't forget this is part of life. Okay, we'll be back in a minute.
Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Matt Connerton here. Join Jen Coffey and I twice a week for Matt Connerton Unleashed, a political talk show that's a little different than what you're used to. No liberal or conservative agenda here, just an honest dialogue about truth and how things really work in the world of politics. Matt Connerton Unleashed, every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network, bringing you the best of the conscious minds in the world. OMTimes Radio, your conscious lifestyle on steroids.
So you did like a 360,
Yes.
Your life before has nothing to do with, what you're doing now. Could you tell us something about it?
Yeah, certainly. Although I can say with retrospect, it seems like the first part of my life was gathering tools for the second part of my life. But I was like most people, I think, in the Western culture, terrified of death, wanted to know nothing about it, stayed away from hospitals. That was just not part of my life at all. I was in theater. I was a Broadway singer, actor, dancer, and that was my life. But I was there in the 70s, the late 70s, and as that time unfolded, AIDS struck.
Mm.
And through the course of the next few years, virtually an entire generation of artists, directors, dancers, choreographers, lighting designers, you name it, they were clear cut, dead, gone.
Yeah.
It was devastating. All my friends, all my associates, all the people I'd worked for. I moved to Florida and had a school for the arts down there. Started doing some local theater, and once again, friends in the company were starting to die, one after another. Finally, I was singing in a nightclub, and I was working for 7 years with a very brilliant pianist, and he died.
Mm.
Now, that was the experience. That was my initiation, I say, into the world of death midwifery. I went up to the hospital he was in, terrified. Know nothing about this. I get myself into the ICU, which is a bit of a miracle as it is. I write about this in my book. I'm with him for the last 4 hours of his life. Amazing things happen. Now, I know nothing about death, but I had a guru that I followed very closely who said, if you ever have the honor of being in the presence of someone who is dying, do nothing but be a witness. And that's all I had to work with. So I went in, I spent the last 4 hours with my friend John. And that's what I did. I was a witness, and unbelievable things happened. First of all, there was all this telepathy back and forth. And then as he started to die, when he really went into the final stages of dying and the telepathy stopped, there was this whirling of energy that happened above him. I knew nothing about that until afterwards, but this whirling like a cyclone of energy that went down into the center of his body. And that's when he flatlined. And I sat there, I was holding his hand, and it was all silent for a few minutes. And then all of a sudden, his hand 3 times kind of jerked, and I got electric shocks in his hand. And then I felt his spirit. We were holding hands. I felt his spirit pass through my hand. It was like millions of buzzing bees, and I could hear him saying, "Goodbye. Goodbye, I love you, thank you, goodbye." Well,
Well, that brings me to tears right there.
that absolutely, I had no reference for this at all. After that experience, well, the grief almost destroyed me. I had never suffered grief. I went down into the abyss of grief. But I came back up and I said, you know what? I'm going to learn everything I can about death. I will never be blindsided by death again. And that's when I started. I read, Kubler-Ross, Anya Fußgräber, everything I could get on consciousness, Kenneth Ring, Dr. Moody, everybody I could read about on death and dying. And then I said, I need to start learning how to be with the dying. And I started volunteering with AIDS organizations, being buddies. Then I started doing hospice and sitting with the dying for days after days, months after months. Then I learned, then I went into home health care hospice because I knew that my father was going to die of cancer, and I knew I was going to need to take care of him. And how do I change a bed? How do I wash his hair? Bit by bit, I learned all these things. And I helped my father die. I helped my mother die. And then I was given this amazing opportunity when I moved to Virginia Beach to work with the palliative care unit at Norfolk General Hospital, one of our major hospitals here in the Tidewater area. And that was a groundbreaking experience for me because it seemed like an inner team of guides and teachers constellated then, because I got to see so many people in so many different terminal conditions. And they literally were teaching me a modality, which I spell out very clearly in my book, of how to commune with the dying, how to make that connection, how to find where they're at, where their brain level is at, and how to communicate and how to help them transition in whatever way that particular individual needed.
This is, and have you found also that every experience is different?
Absolutely.
There's nothing template about it, nothing, cookie cutter.
No, we are all individuals. So how we live, how we die is all individual. Yeah, there can be some patterns, but it's every death is different. Every death is different. Every grief is different. And we have to be so sensitive about that. That was the one thing I noticed with people who wanted to come in as volunteers. They'd have wonderful ideas. One lady came in, she wanted to do Buddhist chanting for all of the people who were dying. And it's like, well, that would be lovely if all of your patients were Buddhists. Mm. But they're not. You're going to have people who are fundamentalist Christians. You're going to have atheists. You're going to have pagans. You're going to have, it's not about you. It's about what do they need.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's so true. I saw an experience I wasn't involved with, but some, a friend had told me what happened. It was a group of friends that was involved with this woman, Nadine, who was a musician. And what had happened, they all gathered around and they sang to her and they played, different music, that she was familiar with. And they brought flowers. She loved daisies. They made her wreath of flowers and put it on her head. Mm. It was friends helping their friends.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I found though, is even then, sometimes, because I had a chance to actually experiment with some of this in the hospital and it just depends on where someone is in the spectrum of death. It's a long process. And so things that work earlier in the process are not appropriate later on. So I found, like, I was with people at Christmas time, and depending on where they were, playing Christmas music was actually painful for them. It was heartbreaking, and it worked as an anchor. For other people earlier on the spectrum, it could bring up wonderful memories. Mm. But somewhere along the line, as we become less attached to the body, as we get closer to transitioning, all those things become anchors. They need to kind of make that separation from the things that they associated with. So it's a very, very sensitive kind of thing. When is it appropriate, and when does that time end?
So I think the people that surround them, like if the person decides, they want to spend, their time at home, mm-hmm. which is wonderful that, society is letting this happen now with insurances.
Yeah.
I think the family or primary caretakers need this information. Maybe it's another, what you do is for the soul, but there's people that need to educate them, because like I said, we talked, the person transitioning is so, they hear everything.
Right.
So if you're going to say, a family member, a wife or something that's saying, don't leave,
exactly.
It holds them.
It becomes
because it pains them.
It does. They don't want to hurt you. So that's why you find that so many people will die at 3:00 in the morning, or they will wait for the loved one if you're in the hospital, or even if you're at home, they'll wait for that loved one to go out and get a sandwich or something to leave the room for that second, and they will transition then because they don't want to burden their loved one with that particular grief.
Yeah, and I've seen this too. This is why, I like Joellyn's work so much, because I can relate. I've seen exactly everything that she's talking about firsthand, personally. And anybody that's interested, don't get locked into books or people saying this is the way it has to be. No. Educate yourself and help the person, the loved one. And even though it's a very difficult situation, it's a very loving situation. Wouldn't you say?
I would say it's one of the greatest honors in the world to be able to be present with someone who's making that transition. That is an incredible blessing to be able to be a part of that.
Yeah.
It needs to be a sacred space around that person who is dying.
Yeah, and it's. I think people are ready. There's so much information about near-death experiences and people leaving, coming back. So this is another part of the puzzle.
Right.
What's happening. That, to me, when a person dies, just let's open our mind. Just disregard, all the religious ideas.
Mm-hmm.
When a person dies, this is part of their soul contract. All right, I've done this, I've experienced this, I needed to go through this for my soul development. Now I'm ready to go back home.
Right.
So it's a difficult subject, but I really appreciate, you coming out and talking about it. And, when you say your book, please tell them the name.
The name of the book is The Art of Death Midwifery.
Okay, I know you go into that more in the other part, but, if I was listening, I'm going, I wanted more information. That's why I keep on stressing that. Or the next break here, please have your pen and paper ready. We'll be back.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Miriam Knight of New Consciousness Review, inviting you to my new show where I interview the rising stars of the conscious awakening. We'll explore the many faces of consciousness and action and intriguing perspectives on life, the universe, and everything in between. Join us each Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on the Rising Stars Show.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community. Feed your soul with waves of consciousness on OMTimes Radio.
There's so much information, and we only can touch upon a little bit at the moment. If somebody's interested in this, let's say to be, let's say, the doula, to do this work, how? I mean, let's all right. Let's forget this. How does a person contact you? Is it a family? Is it the person who's transitioning? I like to give them a person, people an idea of what is involved.
To contact me, I mean, I have to be honest with you. My work is shifted, so I'm not really doing a lot of death midwifery in the public realm any longer. It's kind of shifted. When I do it, it's within my spiritual community primarily. But a person could contact me if they want to even to get some information at my email is Joellyn, Joellyn, at communityofspirits, and that's plural, .org, communityofspirits.org, and I could at least try to help.
I mean, do people go into a hospital, talk to a pastor, and say, all right, let's say my family member has been diagnosed and we know there's nothing that's going to help them. I'm trying to get them sort of a reference point.
Right, and it's still a little tricky, although it is becoming more and more popular. I would say that if you're in a hospital situation, I would talk with the social worker that's usually a part of the team, and tell them that you have a specific interest in someone who can act as a doula. More and more hospitals are opening up to this idea and putting them as part of the team. And that's something I'd like to see grow more and more. I know there are individuals who are acting on an individual basis in that way. I never did that. I personally worked, it was an act of service for me, so I worked through a hospital, and so I was always just a part of the team. For somebody who's interested in trying to get into this path of service, I would say to volunteer with a hospice and let them train you in the hospice volunteer mode, and then layer on top of that the things that you will learn in my book, and there are other books out there now that will give you an inkling of how to be more than just the hospice volunteer. There's more a hospice volunteer can do, and they have the time to do it too, which is really important.
Because I was going to say, it's a story. Like, you use the word team, and it really is true, because each thing, all right, you have the doula with the person that's transitioning, you have the hospice nursing or the visiting nursing, and you have the volunteer who's helping the family. So really, you have an encapsulated little team right there.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you all need to work together. But can you give some example? No, nothing personal examples, but if you walked into the scene, somebody needs help, would you be talking to the family? Would you be talking to the person if they're able to?
Well, that would be it. Yeah. If the person who's dying is still able to communicate their wishes, that's where I would go, because you need the permission of the person who is dying.
Okay.
And that can happen even though they are unable to speak. I worked again like with people in unresponsive states, but if you make that communication sublingually, which can happen, I would always ask, is it okay if we make contacts? And most will say yes, but once in a while there was a no, and you just have to honor that. So the person who is dying first, most preferably, certainly the family needs to be on board. But see, when I worked through the hospital, it was just basically a different kind of situation. I was just given clients to go visit. So that kind of circumvented everything except for getting the permission from the actual person who was dying.
Mm-hmm. Because I was just even thinking, when you're going the unconscious states, I mean, people need to know this if their family member is in a coma.
Mm-hmm.
Because even as in nursing, we're told, please watch what you say, watch how you handle a person, how you do it, because the
Oh,
physical
absolutely.
body isn't looking and talking to you, and maybe say, hey, watch this, go easy or something.
Absolutely. They still, I mean, I have been able to find, I mean, I've been asked to do that with coma patients, and I can't, they're usually down, their brain waves are way down in the delta and maybe towards the epsilon brainwave pattern. But if you can learn to and train yourself with that person, what I find in coma patients is, again, it's not so much a telepathy, but it's more visual images, symbols, and then of course you have to figure out what do those mean. But they communicate in imagery, is what I've found. So even then, even in a coma, they can be responsive.
Yeah, and I think this is important, really very important for people to realize, because if they don't know, you can't say, well, the family, doesn't care. They care a lot, but they aren't educated.
Right.
And that's why I think it's so important, though it's a hard subject to talk about, and we respect the emotional that, everybody's going through. If you understand, you can look at it with a little bit different perspective. I mean, your heart may ache, but you're realizing you're helping in a way that that person wants you to help them. And the one last thing, the people that do things like you do, like going into hospice volunteer, that's important, because you really need to see if you can do it.
Absolutely. It's not for everybody. It just isn't.
No.
It just isn't.
It's
I always say I didn't pick this. It picked me. And that's what I think a lot of people who find themselves in the work of death midwifery will agree. I didn't pick this life. When I it wasn't on my to-do list, but it picked me. And so I had to just honor the call.
I had found as a nurse, as you say, I've had this interest since I was 15. Somehow spirit said, look at this. And my husband had many times kidded me, when I had a case for a while, being about nurse careworking.
Oh, yes.
Your patients never get better. So, but it's something I found very fulfilling.
Yeah.
And that's why I say it's important for people to even think about do this. Really think, try it out. Do the volunteer work, because that is so needed for the family. But having contact also, with the individual, you really need to see if you can do this.
Exactly. And it's a beautiful act of service.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring this out, because with the openness of I call the new awareness, or the choices of people ill, even deciding, like with Kevorkian coming, all his work coming out, making a choice. When do I want to go? Or, there's a lot going on there. But the thing that's so important is not to get involved so much where there's a business angle.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my 2 cents, because there's a lot that pops out up there. Educate yourself, and that's why I bring people like Joellyn on. This is the type of work. This is the type of individual that if you want to emulate or to do, have within your family team. That this is what you need. So it's important. Do you ever have contact with the families after it's over, or?
Very rarely have I had that honor. Not usually, once in a while, but not often.
Yeah, I know that as a nurse, it always seemed like, all right, well, when it's over, we break contact. And I think, the family kind of looks at it, well, you never cared. And that's not true. You're doing this so that they can move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a quite a complicated subject. It's, no matter how it goes.
Yeah. And now I find my work is evolving. As strange as it was for me to find myself in the heart of death midwifery, I am stunned once again as my work is shifting. It stays within the realm and the spectrum of death, but now I find myself having crossed over the threshold of death, and I've founded what I call the community of spirits. And we are, it is now working with the dead and making the reestablishment of communication that used to be a natural thing in centuries past, but now to connect with the dead with a fully conscious mind. That's my new work. It's still part of the death midwifery spectrum,
Yeah.
but a little farther over.
Yeah, but that's also important too, because a lot of times people emotionally go to uh, people who claim to have mediumistic,
Yeah.
Abilities. And I think the whole thing is in the work you do and the way you educate people is to empower them that they can do these things themselves.
That's exactly it. That's what we are going to do with the community of spirits. I'm kind of out there, a little out of my comfort zone. I am not a natural medium. I don't have those abilities, but I understand that a human being can learn how to do that. And that's exactly it. Rather than looking to others to find our own way to reestablish what used to be centuries past, used to be a natural thing for us to talk the angelic realms, to talk to the dead, our beloved dead. And we lost that with the development of the conscious mind. Now it's our job with a fully conscious mind to go back and reestablish that connection, to build that bridge again. And that's what we're going to do. I'm kind of, it's very experimental. I'm looking a lot at the works of Rudolf Steiner. And I've also had this amazing ability to connect with Dr. Raymond Moody, the father of the modern near-death experience, who has agreed. I have the great honor of him mentoring me now on ways of making those connections. So,
yes, because they were hitting on break. Now, again, everybody have your pen and paper ready. And then after you write down things, then we'll talk.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Hi, this is Angela Levesque, host of Entanglement Radio. Join me Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern for inspiring conversations with visionaries in spiritual science and conscious healing. Entanglement Radio, Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern. Transcendent talk for the conscious mind.
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Aliyah, in the circle on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community. The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM-FM.
Okay, everybody, I'm going to make this brief. I hope you have your pen and paper ready. First, I'm going to make a quick announcement, and then Joellyn's going to give some information out, and then we're going to talk about Dr. Moody. As my show is developing, and I'm very blessed to meet very many interesting people. I'm not good at technology. Sometimes I'm really shocked. I'm even on the radio, that I haven't managed to shut, the program off before I even start. But there's a person that's been helping me with as far as newsletters and everything I need to become put out into the public and Facebook. And I want to give her a shout out because she's a very reputable and a very compassionate person, and she puts up with me and my crazy typos and errors. But for people that are starting out, she's really great as a personal assistant and all the services that she offers. So I want to put out her website, http://ChristyHugsblogspot.com, KRISTHUGBLOG spot.com/. Now, I hope I got that even right. If not, we'll try it again next week. But I'm more on Facebook. So, if you ever wander around there and you want to, give me a shout, I have the Circle of Hearts radio page and also Aliyah Fresh. So please contact me and let's talk. Now, getting back to Joellyn and all her information, I'm handing it over to you now.
Okay, thank you. I do have quite a different ways for people to communicate with me. First, I'm inviting you to come join me at Community of Spirits. Again, it's plural, .org. That is my new work. I have 2 Facebook pages. www.facebook.com/The Art of Death Midwifery, which centers on death midwifery. Then I have the Facebook page, www.facebook.com/Community of Spirits, again, plural, and that has to do with my new work. I gave you my email, Joellyn, JOELLYN, @communityofspirits.org. And you can find my book, The Art of Death Midwifery, at most online bookstores, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and most of the major bookstores online carry it. So I hope that you will find that of service if this particular path of service resonates with you.
That's good.
I think I got that all.
I'm glad you got it all out. And I'll be giving Joellyn the link to the podcast tomorrow. And she has the promo, and she'll have the podcast, and she can write all that down again. Because somehow in my little pea brain here, I forgot to write it down. So you got to make sure you do this. So I thank you. And now let's get in a little bit about what happened with Dr. Moody.
This is an amazing thing, and this is how it is. It's just absolutely amazing. So, I'm doing my work now with the Community of Spirits, and I'm writing a blog, and I am saying that we work on a foundation of a belief in life after death, that we can communicate with the dead. So if you're not convinced of that and you need more understanding of that, they're better individuals. And I linked to one of Dr. Moody's websites. And something nudged me. My inner guides and teachers nudged me, and they said, go take a look at that website. And I did, and I found this amazing course that he was teaching online. So I had to do it. I'm taking the course. I'm loving it. And again, I say to my inner guides and teachers, I need to connect with this man. I need to connect with Dr. Moody. Within a few days, there was an opportunity he mentioned on Facebook to Skype with him. I emailed his wife. I explained about my work and what my future work and my intentions and what I wanted to get out of studying with him. And he's basically offered to mentor me privately.
Wow.
Yeah, on all of these amazing things that are going to they're going to form the foundation of this work with the community of spirits. It's going to dovetail with Rudolf Steiner's work, and something new and amazing is going to crystallize, synthesize from the combination of these two geniuses. And I'm honored beyond belief. I can't believe this has happened.
You got me so inspired. I'm saying, shit, I'm going to go check him out too, because I've read, in the beginning.
Right.
And
all of his work, and he is an amazing man. He's a brilliant teacher, but he's such a kind and open-hearted individual with no artifice. It is an absolute delight to work with him.
I was going to say that helps, because I always get panicky when I reach out to somebody like, they're going to say no.
Absolutely. I was scared to death myself, and he's just such a kind man and such a giving man. I am totally honored to be a mentee of Dr. Moody.
Oh, well, like I said, all this information is really, really, really important. And I only mentioned Dr. Moody because maybe there'll be something in the future to bring his voice on and talk about it.
Absolutely.
Because I see it all over. I see this information all over about, there's even, I get newsletters where, people are talking about, green funerals or
yes,
all the, everything. It seems like everybody woke up on the subject.
The amazing thing of death cafes that are starting to appear all over Canada and the United States, where people come together, they drink a little tea, and they talk about death.
Really? I haven't heard about that.
Oh, my goodness. Yes, it's a new phenomena, and I'm seeing it. If you look on Facebook, there's all kinds of groups in various areas. And yes, they get together and they talk about death in a friendly, they have a little tea, and it makes it part of life, which it is. It's a part of life.
Yeah, that's interesting, because actually, even in my own home, I was pondering the idea of having a group. I didn't necessarily a support or grieving group, but a group just to do exactly what these people are doing. Maybe, I can offer coffee or tea or water.
Absolutely.
And just let everybody just talk.
Absolutely. Dr. Steiner says that if we understood what death really is, that day that death happens, when we cross over, none of us remember our birth, but when we cross over, we all remember the day that we died and realize I still exist. And this becomes the most beautiful, gorgeous, happy moment of your entire existence. But, we don't see that on this side. We're not, and I want people to understand that more and more. That's what the community of spirits work is, to help us shift that. So it's not, yes, we're going to grieve. Of course, that person is not going to be in that same physical form ever again, but they still exist. And your relationship with them can still exist on a different level.
Mm. That's so true. And it's interesting comment that you made, because I told you I was going to get May talk to PMH Atwater.
Yes, right.
And she has a book out in NDE and the children. Mm. And part of the book that I've been reading, it says the children remember being in the womb.
Yes.
And being birthed. So all this information, which I am totally learning.
Yeah. I think one of the last books that Wayne Dyer published was about that very thing: children's memories before they were born.
Yeah. So it's the world is ready, and that's why I have to admit I am very thrilled being on the OM platform, because they give me a chance to bring out this information to everybody, so people are able to be empowered to learn.
Yes, absolutely. It's a great service you're giving.
Well, I tell you, I get very excited. That's what I was telling you in our chat. I'd like to get to know the people I'm talking to ahead of time, because I find it thrilling. I'm learning so much. At my old age, I'm learning a lot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But
And isn't it fun?
it is. It really is. It's fascinating. Knowledge is wonderful, and sharing it is wonderful. And I'm really glad that you took part of your Sunday to come and talk with us. And I know we only were able to touch on a few things, but I think you wet the whistle for my people.
I hope so, and I hope people will check out the various places that I have, the Facebook and the blog, and then we can continue the dialogue.
Yeah, and like I said, when I give you the podcast, make sure you include all that information on wherever you post it, so that
I will do it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and all of your listeners.
Yeah, it's been really, like I said, it's been a difficult subject, but I think you took a lot of the fear out, and you offer people, okay, well, how can we actually do something? Because people feel so vulnerable.
Yeah, and with all the years of my being with the dying, I don't find it scary at all. Actually, I find that one of the most comfortable and beautiful places to be. And who would have known that, because I was terrified of the whole subject. And now I think being at the bedside of someone dying is probably the most beautiful place I can be.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's the end of the spectrum. A birth doula brings the spirit in, and a death midwife helps them exit. It's a wonderful service everybody does. Really, Joellyn, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed speaking with you.
Okay. We'll have you back again in a while.
Terrific. I'd love that. That'd be great.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.